Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life. Hey, Thriving Farmers, Michael Kilpatrick here with yet another episode of the Thriving Farmer Podcast. And today I have a special guest. Tim and his wife, Kirsten, own Strawberry Hill Farm in New Brunswick, Canada. And Tim grew up in New Hampshire and moved to Canada in '97. He spent most of his life in agriculture and around greenhouses. He studied compost teas, and the soil food web in the early 2000s, and worked in sales and consulting for biological agriculture for everything from tree care to turf to large-scale agriculture. In 2011, Tim and his wife bought a rundown farm and have since turned it into one of the largest organic farms in Eastern Canada, raising over 50 crops, plus pasture-raised beef, pork, chicken, and eggs. Tim and his wife were the recipients of the Garrett Lew Memorial Achievement Award in 2013 and the Agricultural Leadership Award from the New Brunswick Institute of Agrologists in 2018. Tim currently sits on the board of the directors of the Organic Federation of Canada and is president of the Atlantic Certified Organic. Wow. Welcome to the podcast, Tim.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I didn't realize all those awards and boards you sit on.
Yeah, it adds up.
Stay busy. Talk to us about, again, you were from the US. What prompted you to move to Canada?
Yeah. So we were part of a community organization. You could put a lot of names to it.
Okay.
But suffice it to say that the whole community that we were with in New Hampshire moved to New Brunswick in between 96 and 98. Mm-hmm. And so we moved to Canada at that time. And then our three children were all born up here. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. All right. And then when you moved up there, you were doing agricultural work. What really made you want to actually farm?
Well, I worked with farmers and I did some farming. I always wanted to have a business of my own, but it wasn't until late, 2007 to 2010, that it really got stronger. We wanted the chance to work out some of the biological practices on our own farm. I met a lot of resistance in farmers. I even met resistance with directors and managers in my own organization. And I had a young fella who was 18 at the time say to me, well, you've got all kinds of ideas, but we've got the experience. And I was 35 at the time.
Yeah.
And, I thought, well, where were you when I was, herding sheep and doing all this stuff? Oh, that's right. You were in diapers. But, that's an 18-year-old isn't going to take very kindly to that.
Yeah.
But as I stepped back and thought about that, I realized, you are right. I've never run a farm. I do lack experience. And so we wanted to make a major life change anyway, around 2010 for our kids and a whole bunch of other reasons. So we left the organization, we left the group, bought a farm, and here we are.
And it turns out you were actually a pretty good farmer.
Well, maybe.
All right. So you bought the farm, and then let's talk about what was next for you. Did you start going to farmers markets? How did you pick the crops? Did you know what kind of farm you wanted?
Well, this has been has turned into a little bit of a challenge. When we decided to leave the organization, the community group, we committed to working for 3 years for them to help train other people to do what I did.
Okay.
And they had started, on my recommendation, they had started a CSA program, and I grew it for them. I also did a lot of what we called bioag, ran the worms and the compost and a lot of other stuff. About 6 months into that, they decided that they were going to cut out all the things pretty much that I had been doing. And so that threw me into a position of A, not being needed for 3 years, B, needing work, and C, having something that I'd put a lot of energy and time and was invested in was going to be just canceled or sold to somebody who knows where. So I made a fairly snap decision to take over their CSA program, and we ended up buying that from them. It took the farm in a different direction than we had been hoping. We had been hoping to do maybe 4 crops and some fairly straightforward things. And we had kind of a small vision in mind at the time. When we bought the CSA program, we also bought it from another elderly couple that was retiring. They had a winter program. We bought that from them. Then it kind of launched us into what's grown to what it is today.
Gotcha. So you kind of almost like you kind of got thrown into it pretty hardcore.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, to the point where even on the farm in 2012, we did our first CSA crop. We decided we wanted to be all certified organic, and they were fields that still did not have the 36 months because they had been rented out, and so we tried to grow crops on some marginal fields. Yeah, it was quite an intense bit there for a while.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about your scale. So kind of give us like an overview of like how many acres are you farming and kind of like the different breakup of your business.
Yeah, we're farming about 250 acres, about 15 to 20 acres of vegetables, and the rest would be in grains and pasture and hay for our livestock. Another thing we did pretty much right off was another friend of ours was selling some cows, and we had a significant portion of the farm that the fields are not good for vegetable production. So we bought the cows. So that was another thing that we got right into, which we hadn't initially planned on doing, but we kind of jumped into that. So our farm, kind of our home farm that we originally bought, the total area is 100 acres, about 60 acres of growing land. Then we bought the neighboring farm when they could no longer farm, and there's another 50, 60 acres there, and then we rent probably another 56. I've lost my math here, but another 100 plus acres from other people up and down the river. In some cases, it's people who had their land in a program which is called FLIP here, Farmland Identification Program, whereby if it's being farmed, then they pay a fraction of the taxes. And they're retired, but by having us farm it, it's a win-win because we get to use the land and they get to write off the tax or not to pay as much tax.
Yeah.
So there are different things. There's other people who just, didn't want to bush hog their 3 or 4 acres, and we farm it. And we offer them a tab here at the stand. So we also, I think you mentioned in the bio that we do 50 different crops. We've decided that in a time when farmers have been encouraged to go big or go home, that as fairly new entrants into farming, we weren't, we bought the farm, did not have farms handed down to us. We decided that we would use diversity to work for the benefit of the whole. So no one crop or livestock are going to support the family, but the combination of the whole supports our family. And the idea is the interaction works between. So vegetables that aren't up to quality for the CSA or for markets, they end up going to pigs. Chickens, fertilized pastures. Cows, as I said, utilize parts of the farm that we can't grow vegetables on. So the idea is to create a synergistic, well-working farm.
Absolutely. Okay, so then let's say, how many cows do you have then?
Total animals, it will go up to about 70 to 75 and then down to 60, 65 when they start, when you fluctuate during the year. Yep.
And then the pig operation, how many is that?
Well, we raise between 80 and 100 hogs. a
Okay.
year. Because we're certified organic, we have to go all the way. We have to have our own sows. So we go right from farrow to finish. Um, so we typically run around 9 sows.
9 sows. Okay. And then those are having piglets, and then you grow the piglets and process the piglets.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then those, what's the system for that? Are those in a tunnel, or are those out on pasture? How do the pigs work typically?
Well, we've done a variety of different things. We've had them on pasture, but for pigs where they tend to get sunburnt a little more and they're more native to wooded areas, we always try to have woods within their pasture area. For the last couple of years, we've had pigs almost in exclusively wooded areas.
Okay.
And we do have a movable hut for them. We also have farrowing huts that I use for farrowing outside. We have a barn that we can farrow, and here it's quite cold still in March, and we want to start farrowing then. So we do have stalls in a barn that we use for early farrowing, and we will let the piglets come into the barn if they want to in the winter, just for shelter.
Okay.
We're working with creating round bale houses for the pigs. With the straw. So you grow the grain, take the straw, build these with about 12 round bales. You can build a nice igloo that's really warm and wind protected. And then through the late winter, early spring, when you need hay for bedding in the barn and stuff, then you can utilize those houses there. So it's a kind of a win-win situation.
Gotcha. Nice. And then are you rotate? So obviously then you're not rotating like the vegetables onto the pig land, although do you rotate your cows onto vegetable land at all?
Not very much. We will sometimes, in 2020, we had a very bad drought here, worse than anyone has ever seen in their, 60, 70-year lifetimes.
Yeah.
And so we did graze oat cover crop. That we had cover crops on after vegetables, and we did graze that. We farm in a river valley, and the river land is where the good vegetable growing conditions are. The soil is amazing. It's as close to magic soil as you can get in my books. So it doesn't make sense for us to pasture that for cattle. So we rotate through our 50 types of vegetables, and we don't put much else on the prime vegetable growing land. That said, we do grow some grain now, and the grain rotates with cattle to rejuvenate cattle pastures, to give us the straw we need for garlic, strawberries, bedding, things like that, and to provide grain for broilers that we raise on pasture and for our layers. So but the grain is more of a rotation with the cattle. Last year we did have beets and turnip that finished up in the fall, and after that was done, the pigs all went through that. That was fun to watch them. If you didn't know, you'd go out and see the pigs and think they were bleeding from their mouths because they had that beet juice just all
just running right down.
They loved it. They loved it.
So then for vegetable ground, what's your fertility program?
Pelletized poultry litter that is made up here. So it's heated and pelletized. It's from Freestall Barns, so it's okay to use that for organics. We're using less and less of it, or put it this way, every year for the last 10 years, I bought one load and I keep having more and more left over. It's going further and further as our fertility comes up. We buy a couple of different types of pelletized poultry manure, and we also use a lot of wood ash. So we'll apply about a ton to the acre of wood ash every season for vegetable crops. Those are the biggest single things that we do for fertility. Now we've done this 10 years. In the next 10 years, we may find that certain elements get out of balance. We might have to do a little bit more, but as I said, our soil's really nice here, and we aim to keep good biological activity, which is going to balance out things as well.
I was listening to Ray Tyler the other day. We were on a call together, and he mentioned that he's using sunflower ash, like a sunflower hull ash, and he's really liking that for, I think it's the potassium. Does that make sense? Is that with that potassium in it?
So there's different types of wood ash. We've switched from a fly ash, which came from a mill down near the coast, to another mill that the ash is about twice as dense.
Okay.
It all depends on how efficiently it's burned.
Gotcha.
But there's a lot of calcium, potassium, and a whole range of minors.
Okay.
And so you're adding a lot more. You're getting about, depending on the type of ash, probably about half the liming effect as if you were putting on a calcitic lime.
Yes.
But you're getting a lot of the other minerals with it.
Absolutely. Okay. So how are you spreading that?
We have a spreader,
a
lime spreader,
and you
we tow with the tractor.
Yeah. So just a regular lime spreader.
So every spring we go through with the ash and with the chicken pellets and do a broadcast. The chicken pellets, we're averaging about 1.5 tons, 2 tons to the acre broadcast. And then where we need more fertility, we'll go in with an old potato planter with the fertilizer boxes wide open in the front, and we'll band it, and then we'll plant into those bands.
Gotcha. All right, let's move a little bit to kind of like the management here. What does a typical week look like here? And obviously it changes throughout the season, but what are you focused on doing?
Yeah. So when you say, what am I focused on doing? I focus on management as much as I can, and on fixing problems. I know that sounds maybe like the wrong way to go, but when you have a dozen crew going and you have a couple tractors going and people going this way and that, things come up all the time. So my goal is not to be needed for any specific project. Like as much as possible, I want everything to run without me, so that if I get a call and somebody's got a problem, I can run fix it, and it doesn't shut a line down, or it doesn't prevent orders from getting out that day or whatever. So, I may have a couple hours of work that I have to do that's time sensitive, required to get orders out, but for the most part, I try to make myself available. That said, so Mondays are usually our slow days, the days we have projects. Every one Monday a week here in Canada, at least, is a holiday.
Okay.
Sorry, one Monday a month.
Yes.
One Monday a month here in Canada is a holiday. So if you count on doing stuff, then your whole week gets out of balance. So we just plan on Monday being a project day or a slower day. Gotcha. Tuesday is a harvest and preparation day. Wednesday, there's crew doing harvest and preparation, and we do a lot of order packing.
Okay.
And then Thursday, we do a lot of CSA packing and CSA delivery. So the one thing that I do every week and have done for the last 3 or 4 years is I run our bus an hour to our big city, and I manage the distribution from the bus.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's something I'll meet 150, sometimes upwards of 200 people in a 2.5 hour span come to that bus. A lot goes on there. And I also like to be there to just to see everybody, be that smiling face of the farm, take care of people. It's our single biggest interaction with customers. So that's one thing that is scheduled. Everything schedules around that Thursday afternoon delivery.
Yeah.
Then Friday, we have a few more orders and we finish up for the week. And then now that we have a lot of customizable stuff and online market, the big thing on Friday is projections for the following week.
Interesting, because already by Friday, you can start to see what those orders are coming in, and you can see exactly what the next week looks like for harvest.
Well, no, not quite.
Okay.
We know our CSA numbers.
Okay.
Because they're fixed pretty well. We do allow people to make a hold on stuff, but pretty well we know what our CSA numbers are. And then for our market, we set availability.
Ah,
So
gotcha. Yeah.
we'll go through and say, our CSA is going to take so much. We're going to have this amount extra for market, and that goes on market availability. We encourage all our customers to wait till Friday afternoon or Saturday, Sunday and we send our broadcast out after we've updated availability. So that's done every week.
Gotcha. While you're on that though, why don't we dive into the marketing side a little bit? Because I know you have two systems you're using. You're using a CSA specific management system, and then you use a system for the actual a la carte or just like online order system. Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about that, because you don't allow like a customizable share. You pretty much submit a standard box, right, for folks?
Yes, but no, we do, but we allow them to customize it.
Oh, you do allow. Okay. Yeah.
We do. So we've used like 6 programs over the last 10 years. And the biggest challenge has been, we want to fill everyone's boxes with what we have and with a good selection. We don't want the latecomers to have run out of stuff that the early ones have already picked. Like, we don't want the early ones to be able to get 10 bags of spinach. We want the guys who are, we want it to be uniform. And we want there to be a good spread of minimum of 7, normally 10 to 12 items in that box, regardless of whether it's a half or a 2-person and a full or a 4-person box. We want everybody to get some. So we fill it. Then with the system we have now, the customer the customer gets an email saying, this is what we're planning to send you. If you want to make adjustments, go here. And they click in, and for each item is assigned with a number of credits. Yeah. So when they delete those out of their cart, it adds up credits that they can use, something like a video game. Then they can then spend those credits on putting other things back into the box. Yeah. And if they run out of credits that they freed up, they can keep adding, and it will add a bill to their total. And then we encourage them to wait till near the end of the season, so we're not getting $1 here and $1 there. And it'll add up to $10, $15, and then later on in the year we'll set them a reminder and they'll pay that. So that's how the CSA works. We've been very happy with that. We get in the summer, I think we were getting about 50% customizing. Okay. A sense now, without doing the hard numbers, is that it's closer to 75 now in the winter.
So they're doing a lot more because they're getting more acclimated to using the system, as well as this time of year they want to do more customization because it's probably not the fun summer crops anymore.
Right. So like, I think 1 out of 270 took their spinach out. Everybody wants spinach. Yeah. But when it comes to kohlrabi or some of the squashes, we want people to be able to get what they want. The worst thing with the CSA, I've been told this and I've seen it, is for people to get stuff that they either feel that they can't use or they don't like, or too much. And so if stuff goes to waste that's come in the CSA box, that is going to be far bigger turnoff than thinking they paid too much.
Exactly. Yeah. Because they're willing to go, well, it probably was a slow year this year, or something went wrong. And so they're willing to give you a little grace. But if they've got stuff going bad in their fridge, we are very, we are programmed to hate stuff going to waste. So yeah, for that to see. And
the reality is a lot of people will find waste from what they bought in the supermarket. But and they'll view that a little different than they will if it came in a CSA box and it was wasted. It's just the psychology of it.
Yeah, exactly. Now you're using a separate system for your a la carte, and
yes.
And is that because of like different features, or?
It's primarily because of our meats. And because we want it to be enough separate from the CSA box that there's no confusion, that it's two different things. we want it to be separate from our CSA, and so that there not to be any confusion between the two. Now, the CSA program and Harvey before thought that it was a mistake to do this, but so far this is what we've chosen to do, and it works. The other thing is as I said earlier, the meat. The meat is a big deal, because we can't inventory every package size on the online market. And we all know that the meat does, a steak doesn't all come out cookie cutter.
Exactly. Yes. Or else it'd be fake meat.
So, yeah, right. And so we put an estimated size online. People fill their cart with that. And then the day before it's for pickup or delivery, depending on what they choose, then we collect the order. Yeah. And when we collect it, we write the weights on the slip, we update that and send it to the customer for them to pay.
Gotcha. Yeah. And that system, that's local line you're using, right?
Yes, that's correct.
For the a la carte. And then I think I think Gray's Cart has a similar feature and being allow you to them to check out, but then you to update the totals at the end. I'm not sure, but I think that was one of the features they had. So interesting. And then the CSA software you're using right now is Farmigo, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. And we actually just signed up with them after we did significant research. And there was a couple of top contenders, which we looked at and were wanting to go with, but it just, well, it was, that for me, did have the features we were looking for. And then obviously I had a number of folks reach out and tell me that they really liked it and it worked for them. So I was like, well, that's obviously farmers' point of view is going to be super important when we're trying to make this work. So, but we'll see. Yeah. We'll give you a feedback. We'll give people feedback after a year with it and see how it works.
So I think you had asked me earlier, like an idea of scale. So
yeah,
we've been doing 350 to 400 CSA in the summer. The winter 250 to 300.
Okay,
is our typical winter. Now in 2017 we lost our biggest wholesale account. It went under. We lost a bunch of money, and we had a huge amount of product that was grown for them that we had to liquidate. We started going to a physical market. CSA and wholesale were our primary sales venues up to that point.
Yeah.
We then went to a Saturday market. My wife, bless her, did most of that. And it was every Saturday up at 4:00, get to the market, home again by 4 or 5 in the afternoon. And it took all our weekends. The end of 2019, they decided to move the location of that market, and we did not like where they were moving. And that's when we started an online market.
Gotcha.
And our goal was take the money and time spent at a physical market. Can we do the work here and get the product to the customer for the same price?
Yeah.
So it costs, you're more into this than I am, but from all the research I've done, 20 to 22% of your retail value is spent at the farmer's market or getting to it.
That's exactly, that's about exactly right.
Sometimes up to 25, it just depends.
Yeah.
So our goal is to pack here for 15% and ship it for 10. And we've been able to do that. So it's way nicer to be able to do it at the farm right here and get it to people's doors. And our weekends are freed up. It's been a win-win. Little did we realize when we started that in January of 2020 that COVID was going to hit, and it was going to be a very timely move.
Yeah. You just nailed that one.
Yeah, I don't take credit for that, but yes, we did. And so now our online market accounts for at least 25, probably 30% of our sales, which is a significantly more than our physical market ever made.
Yeah. So it's just, it keeps scale. Does it keep growing, or is it kind of steady right there now?
No, it keeps growing.
That's awesome.
Like, I heard people say in years past, people would say, I made 3,000 at a market, or one person actually said, I made 7,000 at a market. And I nearly fell off my chair. I was like, boys, I'd be in clover if I did that. Well, now, 5,000, 4,000, 5,000 a week is a standard, a standard run market.
Yeah. And that's awesome. I mean, and then one aspect, I kind of miss the farmers markets because I miss the camaraderie there. I miss making those beautiful big displays and people buying them down, and then these mountains of crates just disappearing. But again, right now I have 3 young kids, and do I want to give up every single Saturday for that? And again, on one aspect, yes, they can go with you, but the fact that we have a 6-day-a-week market here on site does work out. Obviously, we'd like to kind of streamline that even a little bit more. So there's 2 things with that. We either got to scale it, and in the summer, I mean, we're doing about 5,000 a week through that. It's a self-service stand. So that actually works out pretty well. But I think this year our goal is, to hit to 8 to 10 every single week. And that will then, I think, be at the scale where it actually really starts to be efficient. But yeah, that farmer's market, there is something about that, especially if you've got, good artisans at that market. And, every Saturday morning is a culinary delight, as well as, providing awesome fresh veggies.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you guys, in my opinion, have gone about this whole pandemic thing a whole lot smarter than some of our Canadian our Canadian politicians. But every month or every whatever, we're in a different code and lockdowns and all this. And for us, it's just, full steam ahead. There's no, can I get to market? There's no reduced, reduced attendance through the stall. There's none of that. It's just the orders came in, we packed it, and it went out the door. We almost don't have to
worry
other than our employees. We don't have to worry about what code is where. And we don't have to worry about making sure that all the people that come in the door follow the right masking procedures and all that. So that's a blessing.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, you just do that. And now with the bus, you set that all up outside so they can pick it up outside, or they come into the bus. How does that work?
Okay, we did have to switch that. So originally, people all came inside the bus. Now we have 2 packers on the bus. And so, and we put tables outside. So people collect their orders outside, but we have 2 staff in the bus. And so when the person comes, there's a sticker with their order on it. It gets put on a plastic box, gets sent into the bus, and within a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes, that box comes back out, and it's the CSA is packed for them. Then everybody's instructed to bring their own bags. Then they just transfer the produce from our plastic bin into their bag and off to their car.
Okay. All right. That's really interesting. Okay. So do you have bulk product then in your bus, all kind of like lined up and set up? Wow. Yeah. And so then it goes in.
So we line up, we have a packing sheet that says what is needed in that bus, and we line it up in order of the way the label is going to call for it.
Yep.
So that, and then we have a side for the 2-person, a side for the 4-person. So that sticker goes on, the box goes in, and it's, just bing, 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 fill the box, and it comes back out.
And I looked at your online store, and one of the things you have is numbers against every single crop. And is that so they stay in the right order?
Yeah. And that was because originally Local Line did not have a way to sort. Now they do. But we haven't changed that. We've stuck with that system. If you need to search something, you can just type the first letters of the first numbers, and it'll pop right up.
Yes.
It allows us to take items that we want to promote and put them at the top. It allows us to take stuff that This is more back end for us, but crops that we don't do in the winter, we don't want to be paging through as we're doing updates. So
Yes.
we'll just put a 999 in front of them and it dumps them all at the bottom of the list. So it's just an easy way for us. It's an easy way for us to sort it.
We're going to start using that, because that's brilliant to be able to push stuff at the top, because again, if they're seeing it right off, they're going to probably pick that compared to stuff all the way at the bottom that you need to protect, like the strawberries.
Right. Although sometimes we'll put strawberries at the top or sweet corn at the top just to get people fired up.
Yes. Okay. Well, and actually, like when we're running full steam ahead in the spring, we run ads for strawberries, and it actually works really well. I mean, direct sale right off a Facebook ad. They go in, they get the strawberries, they add 3 or 4 other items, and now they're at a $25 order. So yeah, having those right up there is good. Let's move a little bit to, you talked about the management. How do you make sure you're focusing on the most vital things on the farm? Because there's obviously, I mean, like you could be packing orders or you could be doing this. I know you said fixing problems earlier, but are there like certain things that you've reserved? Like these are the tasks or these are the areas I'm responsible for?
Running a family business, I think makes that more challenging. But the way we're settled out at the moment is that I'm responsible for production. My wife is responsible for seed ordering, production supply ordering. So that's boxes, bags, anything related to shipping. And she keeps track of and packs and weighs all the meat. So she takes care of it post butcher. I take care of it to the butcher.
Okay.
And then Nolly, our daughter, who's 22, when we started the online market, she said, "Dad, can that be my baby?" And I said, "Absolutely." So she does the majority of the market, updating pictures and all of that, but she also manages all of the order filling. So both the CSA, about half of our CSAs are packed in boxes because they end up going to remote locations or places where the customer doesn't meet us directly, and half are bulk in our bus or from our farm here. But she manages almost all of that. Wholesale vegetables is different, but she does anything retail. So that's how we divide that. We have a bookkeeper that also runs our store here on the farm, because we're in a back road. We don't get a lot of traffic at the farm directly. But we do have a bookkeeper to keep on top of stuff. I can't tell you how much difference it makes when you can look at your accounting system and know where you're at, and your pile of receipts is gone.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's a huge mistake we made this year. Is I was like, well, at the beginning, there's not going to be that much paperwork to do. Well, I ended up with 2 months behind in the books, and we ended up bringing someone on in probably October. And that was literally the best decision we ever made, because having that completely, because one thing, Tim, was we were stressed out all summer that we weren't making money and we were going to run out of cash because we didn't know where our numbers were. And so obviously we were making money, we were putting money in the bank, but because I didn't have up to the week financials, again, I got gray hair out of it. But now what we have is it's a weekly report where she has a weekly report Tuesdays. It's due Monday night from her, but we have a weekly meeting where we go over it on Tuesdays. But she obviously has got gross sales. She got every sales channel, the net sales from every sales channel. She has gross labor. She's got any big expenses coming up. It's basically a snapshot of the business for the week. And that again allows us to all take a little thing. And then she also runs like percentages, like, hey, you made this much and your labor cost you this percentage.
Okay.
So that gives us like and again, in the wintertime, it's very different than the summertime. Like in June, you sometimes, actually May, it's more of a 1-to-1, for every dollar you make, you're costing $1 in labor because you're also buying supplies and stuff. But, I mean, once you hit August, I mean, you can start cruising and be like a 4-to-1 or a 5-to-1. So that's the kind of reporting we're starting to play around with. And it's just so much peace of mind.
In our case, I do a lot of the comparison, the reports. I love numbers. I love that. But just having all the slips in and being able to know where your money's going is huge.
Yeah.
You
Are you
know,
using?
we run a fairly small line of credit for
Okay.
the expenses that for the income and the expenses that we have. And it just,
It
there's a
works.
lot to managing all that.
Yeah. Now, are you using like QuickBooks or Zero to manage the
Yep.
books? Okay, QuickBooks. Yeah. And are you an online QuickBooks or it's desktop version?
Yep. QuickBooks Online. Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep. Now we use a payroll company to do our payroll. I pay, I don't know, anywhere from $8 to $20 every 2 weeks. We do a 2-week payroll, and everything's direct deposit. So QuickBooks, we use QuickBooks primarily to account for the ins and the outs, the cash.
But if you're doing like trying to look at ratios and stuff, that's typically done through spreadsheets.
No, I can get, well, yeah, I guess so. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Because that's what we kind of had to go there. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about your mentors. Obviously along the road, there's always people you're calling on to kind of like get advice from. Who's been that for you on that journey?
Back before COVID, we had a fairly thriving conference, which you attended once or twice here in the Eastern Canada Acorn Conference. And so there were quite a few farmers in that group that would have been mentors. Then there's farmers that would come to the New England Vegetable and Fruit Conference. Very early on, the Roxbury Farm people were great. And then in the early 2000s at one of the Acorn Conference, Klaus and Mary Howell Martins.
Yep.
You know them?
They're grain farmers in central New York. Yeah.
Yeah. They spoke at a conference, and one of the things they said was that they were surprised how collaborative organic farmers were in comparison to the conventional farmers that they had known when they were conventional, where everyone tried to keep what they were doing to their chest. And they made the comment that when we help each other, we all rise. And that has been something that I have taken to heart for years. And that is any interaction with anybody, I'm free to give, but I almost always leave receiving something as well. And I just feel like that's so much better than trying to protect what I have. So that's something that I would say I consider them a mentor in that approach and in that attitude. When it comes now, since COVID, there are a few farmers that I know in Eastern Canada here. We've set up one of the other guys did it called a super farmers group in Facebook. And so if any one of us has a question, we'll write, hey, having trouble finding megaton leek. What have you found that's comparable to that? Or I can't get my peas to germinate. What do you have any tips on peas? So that's kind of my go-to thing if for problems that arise on a a weekly or monthly basis. Sometimes we won't say anything for a couple of months, and then there's other times we'll be back and forth quite a bit.
So you've kind of built
that.
So you built yourself a local mastermind, basically, of kind of like the farmers who are at your scale and doing serious farming work. Right. Yeah. Gotcha.
And they're all in Eastern Canada, but in significantly different conditions. So one's in PEI, where the soils are different. Another one's in Nova Scotia, where their ground never freezes in the winter, which is different. So, you don't want to just ask the neighbor that's right next to you necessarily, because you want to be able to spread, broaden your horizon somewhat. But it doesn't help me to find out what somebody's doing in Virginia or Florida.
Yeah. You've got to you got to give yourself some aspects of same weather and such. And that's why, now like growing Salanova, we just had there was a Zoom call we did with a university. Well, it was a fruit and veg of Vermont with Andre Kiltamo. And, obviously I was able to give some resources, but people in Michigan are going to have different day lengths. And obviously up where you are, they're going to have different things. And you've got to stay somewhat local, but also expand a little bit. You got to have a good mix, I guess, is I think the magic aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you were to able to go back and start your farm over again, what systems would you go back and put in place sooner?
Yeah, I thought some about this. There's certain places I would have invested more money in sooner.
Mm-hmm.
With beef, I would have started with a better handling system.
Okay.
With chickens, I would have started with a better brooder, because how they start makes such a difference.
Yeah.
With pigs, I would have started with better genetics.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
With vegetables, I start with skilled labor right from the get-go. And by that, I mean skilled guys who come in from Mexico, and they come and they help us all summer. And boy, do they know what they're doing in comparison to the local, the labor that's available here locally. We hire as many as we can locally, but we need a core group of people that really understand field work and vegetable production, and these guys are it. The other thing, I would have removed every hairy Galansoga weed I'd see the first time I ever saw it, because it's a nightmare in our area if you let it grow. But these are all little things. I think the biggest reset would have been to put much more resources into our online market at the get-go and home delivery, rather than waiting 8 years to get started on that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that's interesting. You talk about that core group of people, and we're actually been heavily considering that this year. I think we're going to skip another year, try to go with local one more year, because we've actually got a kind of a pretty good core group, I think. But once we scale, this next year, we're actually planning on not growing as much field crops, focusing more on some other areas of the farm. But the year beyond that, we're going to be definitely scaling some field crops for some more wholesale, perennial sort of thing. So in that I think we're gonna need a lot more field help, and that's where we'll go for that. But having that core group of people that know it, and they expect to work in the cold and the heat, and they expect to be working all season long, and they expect 50 hours plus a week, I think is huge, a huge advantage.
Yeah, so our guys come back every single year. They're like our family. I visited them. I went to Mexico. I stayed in their homes. They've said, one of the guys in particular has said to me, mi casa is tu casa. I've learned Spanish to speak with them. So they live in Canada 6 months, and they're in Mexico 6 months. So they're here as much as they are there. Yeah. I don't consider them foreign workers. They're a key part of our team.
Yeah.
And the money they make here is equivalent to 8 to 10 times what they make in Mexico. So it really makes a huge difference for them and their family in Mexico. They want to work. For the one challenge with the Mexican guys is they're not happy if they're not working 60 hours.
Yes. Yeah, because they're there to work.
Yep, 6 10-hour days, and it has to be that way. Now, in the fall, it'll go down a little bit. In the spring, sometimes it'll go down a little bit. Part of that too is that it's different depending on which province you're in and maybe which state you're in. We have to pay overtime, so any hour over 44, they're making time and a half. So that's quite an incentive for them. They would work more than 60 hours, but we just said no. We cap it at 60.
Yeah. And so that means that they basically start at 6 or 7 a.m. and are working, right through to 5 p.m. or 6 p.m.
They go 8 to 6:30.
Okay, 8 to 6:30, and a half hour for lunch then.
And a half hour for lunch, and they have a house right here on the farm, so they go home for lunch, make their food, whatever, almost all the time. We don't charge them for the house. They pay a little bit for rent. They get a typical salary So it really is a good deal for them when you look at it, that they have very low expenses here, and they can, but for us, each one does the work of probably 3. A, because they're working 60 instead of 35 or 40 hours, and B, because they're at least twice as fast as anybody else.
Yeah. Well, they're professional farmers.
They are.
Yeah. Yeah. With that, I'd like to stop here and take a quick break. In a minute, we'll be back with Tim from Strawberry Hill Farms. Where are you on your thriving farmer journey? If you go to growingfarmers.com, you can click on our assessment, take our assessment, just a few questions, and what it will do is show you exactly where you are on the 5-stage thriving farmer journey. And what this will do then is give you some next steps, some resources to help you know what to focus on next in your business to move you to the next level with your farm. All right, guys, we are back with Tim from Strawberry Hill Farm. Tim, talk us a little bit through, you talked right before the break about your team, and you had the H2, it's probably a different program than H2A there, but so you have the folks that come up from Mexico, but then your local folks, do you have anyone you hire locally?
Yes. So we have our daughter plus 2 full-time staff year-round. One guy runs the tractor, feeds the livestock, plows snow, does all that kind of stuff, cuts wood for the wood furnace. And then our daughter and another full-time person do packing. And then as we go into spring, they do seeding and transplant care and all that kind of stuff. Then we hire a couple of part-time. So we hire extra part-time help when on big packing days, and we hire part-time bookkeeper, storekeeper. And then my wife and I obviously are full-time. So that's kind of the year-round picture. In addition to our last year, we brought 5 from Mexico and 2 from Cameroon and Africa. Plus we have a couple of Canadians that only want summer work, so they'll go on unemployment in the winter. Plus we do our best to hire at least 2 summer students.
Okay.
I really feel that working on a farm is very valuable information, and just helps it. Spending a summer on a farm is going to expose you to so many more things than the average person would at almost any other job. You know, and give people a lot better understanding of where their food comes from. So I really feel it's important that we try to hire local students. That can be a challenge, especially because the Canadian government gave out a lot of free money the last couple of years around COVID, and so why would anybody work? So it's been challenging from that aspect. But that's how it looks. We'd hire as many Canadians as we can, and then we bring as many. That determines how many we can bring from Mexico or other countries.
Yeah. Now with the local folks, it sounds like you have a wide range of tasks they're doing. I mean, it sounds like you also are like segmenting people in, like your tractor driver is also plowing snow. Is that like his particular job description for that he's like your machinery guy? How do you make those kind of allocations? Yeah.
So we do have a couple of machinery guys.
Okay.
And actually I didn't think about that earlier. Our delivery driver also runs tractors as well. So when he's not delivering, he's doing he grew up on a farm. He's from a farming family, so he'll be driving tractors in the spring and stuff. So the tractor driver equipment operation is a job description. General field labor, which is anything around picking, cultivating, harvesting, seeding, all of that is a different category. Our tractor driver would be paid a lot more than as a typical field hand.
Now, do you also, with how long they've been with you, do you automatically do raises, or is it kind of like as you feel like they're taking on more responsibility, you're working into that area?
We do both.
Okay.
We try to give raises every year. And it depends a little bit on how we did the previous year. If we've done well, we try to give a little more of a raise. We'd like to do it every year, but I think every year we've been able to do something as far as a raise. Then we also definitely do try to pay people for the value that they bring to the farm. You know, that's challenging, but we do that. And that would be anybody that completes a season. So typically you'd start in at what would be our minimum wage, which this year I think it's $12.75, which would probably in US money would probably be equivalent to around $9.
Oh, wow.
That's the minimum wage. But you know, in 2020, we hired a whole bunch of people in at 15 just to get help.
Yeah.
So it just depends. If somebody has the potential and looks like they're going to do well, we will start at 14 or 15, and then we'll go up from there.
Yeah. So in the US, New York now has, I think, $12.50 an hour minimum wage.
Okay.
Here in Ohio, it's $9.30. Although we're pretty much starting anyone, well, like high school kids, we start about 10 or 12, but anyone else above that's getting 14, 15 US when they come on board.
Yeah.
But I mean, for management, we're looking right around 20 US, which is, it's, I mean, again, if we want them long-term and we expect a lot out of them, that's completely fair. And to try to give them a living wage, which just means they're going to be able to last a long time with us, which again, turnover is your biggest expense. So, I mean, we push them hard and we, you know, have high expectations, but I also try to pay them well for that as well. And if we can, profit share too, you know, try to get them. Obviously in the first year, I told, like, we put that on our farm manager, and she's like, would you expect any profit the first year? And I was like, no, but again, we're thinking long-term with you. So, you know, if you're with us a couple of years, absolutely, there'll be a lot more profit to go around.
We tried to work on a number of different ways to make that work. And that's really challenging particularly in our business, which we're still deciding whether we're going to incorporate. We probably will incorporate, but we're running I don't know how it works in the US, but we're running a 50-50 partnership still.
Okay.
And so it's tough to look at and to know exactly how much you made. Because you're paying off mortgages, you're paying off equipment, you're paying off all kinds of things. And it's at the end of the year, if it's really tough to have a solid figure that you can then say, well, because we made so much, then there's a percentage to go around. You know what I mean?
Well, yes. And that's something I've really been working on. And I don't think I have the right answer for that. But kind of my thought process has been, obviously, you know, you've got your standard overhead expenses. You've got your standard depreciation. Most any equipment's going to get a 5-year depreciation. And you have a standard percentage that say, we're going to, you know, spend 10% of our gross on new equipment. But yeah, it's going to change. I mean, like if you look at someone like Paul and Sandy Arnold, who've been now, 30 something years farming, they have a very, very different balance sheet and profit and loss statement than you at 10 years in the game. It's like 11, and then me at 1 year in the game. So, it's I mean, like last year we took a net loss, obviously, because it was our first year, but we invested $70,000 in infrastructure. Actually, more than that, when you actually run the numbers. I mean, the one greenhouse alone was 60,000 by the time we were all said and done. So, it's going to be, you know, but if you look at those investments, and it all comes back to how you categorize stuff. And that's why I think it's so important for most farmers to, yes, have that bookkeeper, but also have that accountant and someone that understands ag. Because the more they understand ag, the more they can understand, you know, how to allocate and, you know, where that magic number is. And I think back to your point too, is obviously as the farmer, someone who's taken the most risk, you need to make the greatest reward. But for me, the reason why we put in the profit sharing is we want to try to get our employees as invested as possible in our, you know, we want to share that with them. one thing we haven't done, which is something I read a book recently called, oh, maybe it was called Build to Sell. I forget what it was called, but it's really interesting thought process. But they typically, if they say for every business, you should put let's say if we do sell the business, there will be a percentage for the team. And again, I know 99% of us farmers never think about that, but it's always just an interesting point of view, because obviously most entrepreneurs build businesses to sell. Obviously, us farmers do it because it's a lifestyle. And I think that's we see farming differently typically. Yes, we have to make money, but we do it because we love it. We do it because we want to feed the community. We want to keep doing that for a long time.
Right. And we may want, exactly. So, I do a lot of charts. I do a net worth statement at the end of every year. I do inventory, and all that goes to the accountant as well. But and our net worth goes up in leaps and bounds more than the cash we make.
Well, because prices are, and values of your entire farm operation are going up.
And because we're still buying so much of our stuff. You say 10 years, but we were able to buy the original 100 acres with money we had saved because, my wife, I was 37, my wife was 40 at the time. So, but then, since we've had to buy a whole bunch of different pieces of equipment, especially when you're in livestock and cattle and mowers and balers, and it's very capital intensive. And then we bought the neighboring farm, so we're paying down the mortgage on that. So a lot of this is, a lot of the money goes into those kinds of things.
So it's not available to pay out as profit.
It's not available to pay out as profit. No.
Yeah. And I think too, now this is interesting too. You have to think about the type of farm too, because the more grain, the more extensive farm you have. Let's say, a grain farm, a cattle farm, a pig farm would be way more extensive. Typically those have a lot higher costs of land and equipment, balers and spreaders and tractors and stuff compared to, let's say, a small vegetable operation, which typically has a lot less capital.
Yeah. And so like when you're looking at your asset turnover ratio for a typical farm, you're looking at 20 to 40%. So that means if you have $1 million in asset, you're only making 200 to 400,000. Well, we're running 55%. So we're running a lot better.
Yeah.
Still, this last year, my 1970s mower, long story short, I had enough with it. It wasn't going to do the job after my pickup anyway, long story short, I had to put $23,000 into a mower just to cut hay for 70 cows.
Yeah. And on one aspect, it felt really good, but on the other aspect, it was a huge hit in the pocketbook.
Yeah. And so what do you call a profit? It's a challenge. Like, I can tell you what we pay tax on. After the accountant's done, but it becomes challenging to know how to pass on profit to an employee, I guess is all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I get you on that. Now it's interesting too. I mean, obviously I'm sure like your employees too have, access to seconds, and I'm sure there's all sorts of other perks.
Absolutely. Yes. We give them a discount at the store and they can have an unlimited number of seconds. And they can have an unlimited, except for that the supply is limited, but number of eggs that may be, dirty or damaged or too big or too whatever. So there are a number of perks that way. Yes.
Yeah. But so and I think it all comes back to typically people that are in farming are in it because they love it. And they don't really, it's not there because because seriously, I mean, like if I really wanted to make money, I have a standing offer from a friend of mine for a 6-figure position in her company. She says, Michael, if you ever want to come back, this is what you could be making. And that's all fine and good. But again, I was super stressed out. I was not eating well. I was, I was not doing it. It was not a good place when I was working for her just because of, kind of the stress of that business. So, and I think
my brother, what's interesting? I don't know if this will go in the podcast or not, but what's interesting is my brother is in one of those categories of, well over the six-figure kind of thing. Um, and we were talking the other day, and I said to him something like, I don't know if I'm just crazy or what doing this farming thing. And he said, you could have a job like mine. And then we got chatting a little bit more, and I said, well, this is where our net worth is at, and this is where it was when we started farming. And he goes, yeah, that's about where mine is too.
Yeah.
So there's other ways to cut the cake. He's paying income tax on that salary, and I'm paying income tax on a $20,000 for the year.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
a big difference because I'm everything's getting reinvested in the farm.
Yeah.
So, it looks great to say I'm making all that money, but at the end of the day, what do you, I'm suspicious that I might be ending up with almost as much as he is.
Yes. And you're doing what you love, and you're doing something
That's right.
is helping people and feeding your community.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Whew. All right. Let's move on to marketing. That was a fun conversation. Let's move on to marketing though. How do you sell your stuff?
I don't.
Okay.
I tell our story.
All right. Let's dive into that a little bit. What's the story that you're telling folks?
So, our daughter went to college and took business marketing because she said to me, Dad, I want to take over the farm. What do you think? And I said, take business. You're going to need business to run the farm. So she decided to focus on marketing. And that's where she learned that people buy for the why you do it, the how you do it, and then they'll buy what you have to offer. So I don't want people to look at my carrot compared to the carrot in the supermarket or the carrot down the road. I want them to come to me because they love who we are, why we do it, and what we do. So if I do the first part right, I never have to worry about selling the carrot. That's why I don't do marketing. I do storytelling. So we do some paid ads, but it's telling a story. And our daughter said to me just last night, she said, when we did a Facebook, we ran a Facebook, we still run a Facebook page, and we've had issues with that in the last year. They shut down our farm and shut down the page, and then they gave it back, and then they cut our administrator access to the page. So it's sitting there, but we can't touch anything about it. And
oh my gosh.
They won't tell us why. They'll just say we violated something, and they'll give us a list of 20 things that we could possibly have violated. But you can't talk to anybody, nothing. It's a disaster.
Yes.
Facebook used to be the way we told our story. But one case, there was a flood in the local city, and our Kirsten put out a post offering to deliver vegetables free of charge to anybody that needed help in the flooding. And that got shared way more than any paid ad, anything. It was over 80,000 reach on that one, which isn't viral, but it is, it's significant in our little neck of the woods.
Yeah.
And when I went to Mexico, I posted about the picture and the guys and where, visiting them and telling the story about how they come and that I'm going to see them and their families and those kinds of things. We like to tell the story about how the animals are raised, show pictures of moving cattle, and then talk about how everything works together on the farm. Pigs eating the squash that we threw out, those kinds of things. So we're sharing kind of how we do stuff and why. Organic, environmentally conscious, working with nature, all these different things. That's what we're aiming to promote. Not would you buy my carrot?
Because there's a heck of a lot of carrots out there, and there's a heck of a lot of carrots that are probably cheaper than your carrot, but people are still buying your carrot to the tune of, people lining up at the cities.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're telling me, I didn't know a carrot could taste like this. These carrots taste amazing.
Yeah.
and then they come back because it tastes good. Like you do have to have a good product.
Yeah.
But at the same time, um, you want them to buy into who you are and what you are and make them feel a part of it. And then selling is not a problem.
Who would you say your most typical person who buys from you? What's the age demographic on that? Does it range?
Yes, but surprisingly not as much as you might think.
Okay.
The demographic starts with college students. So we have a number of them, and it goes right up through families, right up into people who are retired, 80s, 90s. We do the whole spectrum. Now, if you put everybody in front of us at one time, it's probably going to be more heavily weighted toward the 40 to 60 range.
Okay. Yeah.
But we definitely have the entire spread. What's interesting is that we sell far more product in particular regions. So it's not so much the age demographic as where they're located.
Fascinating. Okay.
Yeah. So our local town, Woodstock, is a border town. It's 10 minutes across to Holton, Maine.
Okay.
And it's long-term farming country, Carleton County, potato country. Everybody grew up on potatoes, and they don't expect to pay anything for food. If stuff gets too expensive, they go across the border and buy it over there. This is pre-COVID. So this local town, Woodstock, is not a very good market for us. Now, as people move in from Ontario, they're flooding in from other provinces. Then we start to see an uptick. Our biggest market by far and away is the capital city of our province, Fredericton. And, there's a lot more people that are environmentally conscious. There's a lot more people that are city, don't have access to gardens, probably better paid. There's a lot of government positions, and that's, probably 80% of all our business is in that one city.
Interesting. Yeah. And how far is that from you again?
An hour and 10.
Okay. So that's actually not that bad. That's pretty much what Saratoga was for us when we were back in New York, an hour and 10 minutes. Yeah. Let's talk, you've been farming now for a while, and I know you've been pretty active in your, farming education in your region. What do you think the biggest mistake that you see beginning farmers making is?
Jumping into things without a solid business plan. Farming has to be run as a business in order to succeed. I also see people trying to farm like a hobby. So if you, our kids enjoyed the movie called, with the Babe, with the little pig. And you just, maybe at one time you could hobby farm like that and make a living, but this day and age, it's not, I don't think it's viable or possible unless you're willing to live on a very subsistence kind of level. But if you want to raise kids and send them to college and those kinds of things, you really have to farm as a business, and you have to think in terms of setting your pricing, which is the second thing I had, is improper pricing. We faced a fair amount of competition from people, say, around COVID that wanted to supplement their income. So they put a squash patch in the backyard, and then they sell it dirt cheap because that's what everybody else did 30, 40 years ago. Yeah. And then people come to us and say, well, can I buy a 50-pound bag of squash for $10? And we look at them and say, no, or they just come and say, I want a 50-pound bag of squash. And we say, okay, we'll give you wholesale. That'll be $60, $1.20 a pound. Yes. And they look at me like, you must be out of your mind. I wanted that for $10. Yeah. Sorry, you'll have to go to your friend down the road. And then when they're out, you can come back to me. But I have to, there's a huge amount of cost that I have to incur in order to make my living farming. Yeah.
It's very different than just tilling up a section in your backyard and throwing some squash in. And they're like, well, the seed only costs 30 cents. And we're like, there's so much more than that.
There's so much more than that. And then on the other hand, you have people that say, well, I'll charge $12 for my eggs, for a dozen eggs. Well, that's okay if you're selling 10 dozen eggs, but if you're selling, 300 dozen a week, maybe not. And so it doesn't make a solid business plan to plan on growing them for 12, because you never sell them for that. So those are some of the challenges that I see beginning farmers, and it comes down to you have to look at the numbers and what's reasonable. And a business plan can be a very scary word, but it really doesn't have to be.
Yeah. And, one of the things that's really interesting, because, when I first started our first farm, we didn't have a business plan, and we were kind of the seat of our pants. And for years, we didn't know. Now with the new farm here in Ohio, the numbers are everything. And that's allowed us to do, 20% more in our first year than we ever thought we would do, because, as the season progressed, we just watched the categories and watched the numbers and shifted and swung as we watched what was changing.
Right.
But yeah, knowing those numbers is so key. And you don't realize that, a cucumber, you can make triple the amount if you turn it into a pickle. It's just those simple things that make a big difference. What encouragement would you go back and give your new farmer self?
I'd say it may take some time, but you'll be okay. Try to enjoy the little moments and don't stress too much. And when one door closes, another one will open if you watch for it.
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of sleepless nights over things that have turned out to end up being blessings. Would they have been the same blessing if I hadn't lost sleep over it? Maybe not.
Yeah.
But it's been amazing to me to see how things have worked out.
If you could pick one, what would be your favorite farming tool?
That's a tricky question, because my smartphone is my most useful tool, but it's not always my favorite.
Yeah.
It has the flashlight, Google information, communication, spreadsheets, camera, and I love taking pictures, calculator, all kinds of stuff on it. However, it can be annoying. If I'm looking strictly at a favorite farm tool, it's probably one of our pieces of weeding equipment. Basket weeder under our International 140, or we have a nice Danish cultivator set that's manually guided. And it's really cool to see a piece of weeding equipment work well. It's just something very satisfying about, especially after you've spent hours and hours weeding, to see one of those go through and what it does. It's really satisfying.
Yeah. What brand is that Danish tool?
I don't have that in my head.
Is it like
it's written?
Is it a Skekati?
It's written in Danish. No, it's not something that I'd ever seen before.
Oh, okay. You just happened to find it somewhere and it works great.
It was amazing. A guy who grows sunflowers across the river from me had a potato planter for sale, and my potato planter is pretty well beat. It's like, over 50 years old. So I went over to look at it, and he made some comment about a cultivator. And I said, hey, can I see it? And I ended up picking it up for, I think, $6,000, and it was like brand new.
Wow.
It was a $25,000 piece of equipment. It's got fertilizer hoppers, sprayers, not that I use it. You sit on the back, you guide it. It's got all the spring tines. I've sent a whole bunch of pictures of that to Eric Gallant in the University of Maine. And we've talked back and forth. I also am on a project with him where he sent me some weeding tools to try. And so it'd be similar to any of those others that you steer. This one's just very heavy built. It's very solid.
Interesting. I'll have to do more research on that. Where can people find out more about you and your work?
I would have said Facebook. And we did start a new Facebook page, Strawberry Hill Farm NB. And our old page, which is just Strawberry Hill Farm, is also up there. but we haven't been able to make any adjustments since June. So it looks like we fell off the planet. But there is a lot of information there. We did some website upgrades, and with that, we lost a lot of the old information on our website, but there's still some there, strawberryhillfarm.ca, which will take you also to our market website, which is strawberryhillmarket.ca. So there's a lot of information there. We have an Instagram page. We also have a TikTok and YouTube account, but there's not a whole lot on there.
Okay.
I'm considering doing more YouTube stuff. I was in this fall, a team came and did filming for a couple of episodes going on Bell TV in Canada.
Oh, very cool.
And that was a very interesting and cool experience for me to be involved as sort of as an actor in that episode, but it was a documentary type thing.
Yep.
And I'd love to do some more of that. The expense is the issue. Obviously, when they came and did it, then I didn't have to pay for it.
Yes.
But if I turn around and bring them back, then I have to pay for it. Expense is an issue. But it's a very good way of telling their story if you can get it out.
Exactly. Well, Tim, this has been fabulous to have you on. Thank you so much for your time today, and really appreciate all the wisdom you shared in this episode.
Well, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Hey, Thriving Farmers, have you checked us out on YouTube lately? We have a bunch of new content there, including a few rants by me. I want to tell you, you don't want to miss them. I actually go rant about, some of the problems I see in our space and some of the challenges I see farmers facing. So go check that out. We've got instructional videos over there as well. Talk about setting up our new farm here in Ohio and all the steps we're going to do that, as well as just tutorials and tips on best practices for all sorts of things on the farm. So go ahead, check over at Growing Farmers on YouTube and see the new content we put together for you. So there you have it, another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. Those mean everything to us. We love to hear what you're thinking. If you have a podcast guest that you can recommend, please pop on over to the Thriving Farmer Podcast website and leave us a review. That's thrivingfarmerpodcast.com.